Hello, welcome to Champagne Channeling. Happy Friday to you all. This conversation is something I am so excited to have, and I cannot wait to welcome Danielle Searancke. She is the SQUAMISH medium. She is a mentor, a teacher, now a friend. She's really helped me on my mediumship development, and then also in other avenues that I'm excited to share with you. So welcome, Danielle. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me, Jenny. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for saying yes. I was so nervous. I was in a 7-minute meditation, and it was called the 7-minute miracle. And I wanted to have 5,000 downloads on my podcast. And we were supposed to go through this envision of what it would feel like and embody what that would be. And I couldn't do it. I was like, well, I guess I have to take action and ask people. And so in that 7 minutes, I was off camera and I just started messaging everyone that I would desire. And everyone said yes, except one person. He said maybe. But I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I just got like booked up with like 15 people within a couple hours. And you were one of the first people that were like, I'd absolutely love to support you. And it just gave me like a warm hug all over. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I remember the podcasting days where I asked people I really admired in the mediumship space to come on, and almost all said yes. And I remember the excitement. So I'm really happy and honored to be that experience for you. So thank you, because I remember being on your end of that experience and how good that feels. So thank you.
Yes, and you've been an inspiration on many levels. You have a very, very successful podcast. Did you just say you had 200,000 downloads recently?
I'm already at like 240,000 downloads right now.
Oh.
Like I'm just getting like more and more and more all the time. So yeah, it's been, almost 3 years of commitment. But it really is my favorite thing I do in my practice and in my business. And I love my podcast. So yeah, I'm about 240,000 downloads right now.
Yes, it's amazing. Congratulations. And speaking of that, did you bring a beverage of choice?
Ooh, I did. I brought my Diabolica Pinot Gris.
I love it. And the glass is so beautiful.
Yeah, my Nana's wine glass.
Oh, of course.
So yes.
I have some sparkling rosé. So cheers. And
Cheers.
You and your podcast success. Through your success, you have curated a program. And I took it. I don't know if you knew that, because it is a pre-recorded program. And that is what launched me into this, and it gave me the confidence because you broke it down in such a simplistic way, and it made it like tangible. I just, when you think of podcast, it's so out there. You're like, well, how do we even start? What mic do I buy? And you're so detail oriented. I know that you always reference the Virgo in you. Yes. And it shows in the way you teach, and I really respond to that. So can you tell me a little bit about what that offering looks like, just in case somebody is listening that wants to start a podcast?
Yeah. So I've always been someone who has really kind of like followed and listened to my audience, and I create things based off of the things that they're asking for. And there was a big chunk of time when I was doing mentoring and programs where people were like, how do I start a podcast? I want to start a podcast. And there's so much to podcasting that has nothing to do with recording, editing, posting. It's a healing tool, right? For me, podcasting was a huge healing tool. It was like, why do I resist sharing my voice? Why do I have this story that I have nothing to share? Why do I feel like it's all been said before and my voice doesn't count? And so I realized that the journey to podcasting was actually one of healing. And so I wanted to create the program with all the context in place so that people could get clear on any resistances they have around sharing their voice before they get into formulating what I say is your first 8 episodes. It's good because we're a binge listening society to at least release with like a couple episodes so people can like download a lot and like continue on and like listen. And so thank you for like celebrating the way I've structured my program, because I always think like I overdo it a lot because I provide workbooks and instruction and tutorials. And, I guess that's part of my brand. People can expect that when they come into any of my containers, they'll be overloaded with content and different ways of doing things. But it was the empowered podcaster. I wanted people to feel empowered sharing their voice. And I don't think that this form of media is oversaturated, because our voice carries a unique fingerprint that carries the intentions of our soul. And we all may be saying very similar things, but the way that we say it and the voice that carries from our body lands with different people differently. So it's worth everybody sharing their voice. And I love podcasting because I had stage fright for a long time. And so it wasn't comfortable for me to do an Instagram live or host these large master classes or these big programs until I could heal that stage fright. So podcasting for me was incredibly safe. It was like I could do it in my jammies in my bed. My first year of podcasting was completely unedited. It was like totally grassroots. It's like whatever I say, you get, until I got a podcast editor finally, who's been a game changer for me. And yeah, so I created this program. It's about a 3.5 hour journey to work through the 3 modules of, healing your fear of being heard, getting clear, confident, and connected to what you want to say, formulating those first 8 episodes, and then the technical aspect on how you can actually DIY your podcast really easily. And if you have a Mac computer, for free.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make it like really accessible to people, is what I was hoping, like accessible in the way, not just finances and equipment, but also it's not that complicated.
No, it's not.
Right.
And you're right. Like mine is my throat chakra. Huge. You are so kind. And you've said this to me multiple times. And it's like a little like gem I put in my pocket, but you always comment on how confident I am. And I love that because I'm like, wow, like that shows I've healed a lot of things that I've overcome. And because the opposite of confidence is like insecurity and self-doubt. And I was very insecure and I had a lot of self-doubt, especially around speaking. I do have some minor dyslexia. I mix up words, syllables, numbers, all of it. And when I started working with spirit, especially talking and communicating on their behalf, it would flow out of me and I would have less and less mistakes. And it's because I wasn't trying to memorize something. I was speaking from my heart. And so I just resonate with your message, how you teach, what you teach. And I do believe that we have that our voices have a frequency, and the people that resonate with you or resonate with me are more inclined to absorb the message.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you can get over the fact that you're not going to be for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a lot less scary to share yourself out there, because that is the truth. And nor would you want to be for everyone. You'd be way overwhelmed. And I say to you, like with you, I just feel like you have an innate natural confidence. I wonder often if any of the insecurities were projections that were placed on you.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's like when we meet someone who knows themselves and clearly knows themselves, all that echoes in somebody who hasn't been there yet is how much they don't know themselves. And therefore, a lot of people try to bring us down with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, yeah, you just have a natural, innate confidence that's part of your essence. That's what I see. But that's my role as a mentor, is I am clearly able to see everyone's highest potential.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I have that ability too. And I have this little tough love. I'm very in the feminine and I have the compassion, but I have little patience for people that like muddle through mediocrity. I'm like, game time, we're gonna get going and we're gonna work on this, because why wouldn't you want to?
Yeah, I'm the same in the way where I can get maybe frustrated with people who just don't take action.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
you can think all day long, and like we're thinkers by nature. We're born with these brains we don't quite understand, but you're not going to get any closer to where you want to be by thinking about it fully. Like you have to take some sort of action towards it. And so I'm a bit of a tough mom there, because I'm also not the type of mentor who will babysit somebody. I won't check in on people. If I gave you an assignment, it's up to you to complete it. I'm not going to follow up. You have to take self-agency. That's what we're gifted with here, and take those next steps to get where you want to go.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes I can not be as patient with people who just are unwilling to make any kind of like movements forward, if that makes sense.
You and I have so much in common, and we haven't been able to connect one-on-one. And it's interesting when you talk, because I do think that is the balance of the masculine and feminine with us, because we do have the feminine, and then there's that masculine that I would want that in a coach or a mentor or a leader or somebody I look up to. I want them to call me out on my stuff, and I want them to pave the way, but also say like, okay, get moving. Because I feel like this, when I want to be in I am a Pisces moon. We were just talking about that. And I want to do that on my own terms. I don't want you to hold me in that space, because I heal kind of alone. if that makes
Mm.
sense. And then when I come to seek help, I'm really ready to apply myself. And I attract people that are ready to do the same, I think.
Yeah, for the most part, I think I definitely do too. But I think the challenges that I've had have been very divine because they've improved my teaching ability,
Mm,
right? And also getting really clear on the people who I think I can help the most, and then creating content and classes that really speak to those
yeah,
people, right?
yeah. I think
Yeah.
I got so excited to talk to you that I sort of like jumped ahead. And so let me
It's all
back up
good.
a little bit. Danielle is a medium and she's much more than that. And I met her through Instagram, and then I've joined her spirit school, spirit circle. And it's a community of over 100 women, I believe.
I think we're about 94 right now,
Okay.
fluctuates every week.
Yeah.
Members come,
So
members go.
this is a platform where you can come and really grow your own intuition, your psychic abilities, your mediumship abilities, whatever you have interest in. I believe that we all have all of these gifts. I know that that's
Mm.
something that people argue about, but in this community, you can tap into anything. Animal communication, you're so supported. We're in communication every single day, whether it's personal or she brings in speakers, she does group readings now. There's so much content. Please fill in what I left out, but that is one of, it's like your baby, but it's
It is.
so powerful, and I've really grown within that container and the classes I've taken outside of that container that you also offer.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. The Spirit School Collective is, again, something Spirit just really dropped in. I ran my first 6-week mediumship development experience, and they kept asking, like, what's next? And I'm a little bit skeptical about advanced mediumship classes because I think advancing mediumship is really in the arena. It's like doing the work. It's like letting your spirit guides be your mentor after a certain while. That's where you're going to get the most growth and experience. And so I was asking the world of spirit, like, how can I support these people ongoing? And they mentioned a membership. And that was not even in the realm of my potentiality because I'd never even been in a membership. I had no idea how to structure one, but I had spirit had my back. They're actually here with me right now. I can feel them. And
I
so,
got it at the same time, Danielle.
yeah, I
I watched
know.
you. I was like, oh, I felt that. Oh my gosh, that's so weird.
So they basically said, like, do this. And that idea came in at 10 a.m. And this is how action orientated I am. I launched it by 4 p.m. And within 2 days, I had 66 people signed up. And this was only like 5 months into my full-time mediumship journey. So it was clearly something people needed. And the whole reason why I love the membership is because I developed in a way that community was not supported. It was either you make it or you don't. And there wasn't a whole lot of people who demonstrated what success looked like in the mediumship realm. There wasn't anyone talking about money. There wasn't anyone talking about refunds. There wasn't anyone talking about the shadowy side of this work. And what I yearned for early on in my development was people to talk to,
Mhm.
right? Like, was people that I could trust and talk to. And so I'm always creating from that lens of what do I wish I had? That's how I create everything that I make. And that's why I think it does really well. So I wish I had a community. I wish I had a safe space to practice some of my other interests, which is why I don't just solely focus on mediumship, because in the grand scheme of things, when we are called into a life of service, there's so many similarities between all the modalities that we have. And all the modalities that we lean into and develop on is our own unique little healing journey. So I really like to frame even my mediumship development that mediumship is just a tool that I have had to heal myself. And so really what I hope people get from the community is it doesn't matter what abilities and gifts you're rocking, you need to heal certain aspects of your human to be able to step fully into those abilities publicly. And so a lot of what I try to create are opportunities and experiences for people to see you're not alone in that way of thinking, right? So if you're not the only one thinking like that, how then can we as a collective learn from one another on how to move beyond that to get where we want to go? And that's the beauty of being in a very vulnerable space. And I'm very cautious about who I magnetize and attract. I'm not about like the huge numbers, even though I do pull really big numbers, because I want the right people
Yeah.
in there. I'm not looking for people who are just looking for the glory, looking for the attention. I've had people come in and out of my space very quickly who need that because that's not what that space is about. So it's just community and being seen. And it's my favorite place to show up and serve. And I feel so blessed to be able to help people every single month doing this.
And you do, and you really do. And there's been a month, there's been times where I'm not very interactive, but it's almost like family. Like you don't talk to family every week, but they're there. And that's what I felt with your community, is because the relationships I have built are solid. And I know that I could lean in if I need to. I know that there's content upon content upon content to reference if, I'm hung up on something. The one thing I love, and I think we have this in common, is mediumship is more about communication to the dead. Like, I think that that's the thing that I get mad when people say, oh, she talks to dead people. I'm like, can we just not say that? It makes my skin crawl kind of, because it's just so, it deserves such more respect, I guess. And then it is about, the way spirit's using me is really helping people to connect with the spirit within. That's what's so important. And yes, I love doing mediumship readings. I feel like they're more profound when there is like kind of grief involved and something's either new or a message is really powerful, because then there is healing involved. But when, somebody's like, who's around me? It's like that, this isn't, I don't want it to be a trick.
Yeah, a party trick. Well, that's why I don't do group readings, by the way. And I never have. I've done one and I felt like a party favor, tucked away in the corner as entertainment. And I've refused to do them in my entire career because I have so much respect for this work. And just so you know, synchronicity strikes us again, where I was just recording a podcast episode earlier on my podcast about like a second part on when to go full time into this work. And one of the things I say, because I was talking about preparing the conversations you're going to have with friends, colleagues, and that's what I always got. People were like, oh, you talk to dead people. And I started just saying, no, they are much more alive than we are.
Yeah. Yes.
And that really
they're not confined.
No, I mean, the life, the vibrancy in which they reside in, we feel dead in comparison to where they reside. So they are not dead. They are much more alive than we are.
Yeah. That every ounce of me is like kind of buzzing right now, because we are confined by the body. Yeah. And I just did a call with Gordon Smith, who I know that you love too. He's like I know he's gay, but I kind of have a crush on him.
He's Scottish. It's the accent.
It's everything about him. I'm going to see him in London in October. I can't.
You are going to that, yes.
And so he was with James Van Prague. Anyway, we're doing a class, and just watching them work together is just magical. I'm like, oh my gosh. And they were just talking about how the spirit is actually 70% outside of the body. So our spirit is much bigger than our body. And we need to just start connecting with more of our spirit, and our body's the messenger. And I know that you know all this. I just want listeners to understand, like, when you start diving into this work, it's endless. And the first part is getting back in the body and healing the body and what has happened to the body and the nervous system and anything that you've experienced. And you will continue to experience more things that are hard, because it's your own evolution. You come here to learn and grow and evolve.
Yes. When you step into something like mediumship or animal communication or angel work, you'll never become a master of the craft.
Never.
You'll never be a master of the craft. And you have to be okay with that. This isn't like how our patriarchal, society is set up, where it's like you get a certificate and now you're worthy. It's like we are on a path that is ever evolving, lifetime upon lifetime. And you have to be okay with that, being able to step into this work, right?
Yeah. And for me, the way it shows up is getting more in my purpose and heart's expression. And I know when I radiate from that place, then other people are drawn. And, I just was talking today about how conviction is contagious. And so there's so many people out there that are like, they're so convicted on what they're speaking, and they end up selling the conviction, not what they're selling. And I want to teach people to find the conviction within themselves, and that's within the spirit.
Yeah, definitely. That's beautiful.
And so return home to yourself. Okay. So mediumship obviously has been your journey, and how did you know, like, do you have a pivotal moment, or was it just sort of a slow process, or did you go to any school or training, or how did it unfold?
So my story is one of kind of like my whole every time I teach, I'm like, I have to reverse engineer this, right? So I did not step into mediumship and development until I was 31 and I had my daughter. And I literally had like the seventh medium I ever had a reading by say, "You're a medium." I'm like, "You are silly." I'm like, "No, I am not." Because I mean, back then I'd worked with race cars my whole life. I was very much in my masculine. Motherhood is actually what awoke in me and my feminine, which then in turn brought through this opportunity to develop mediumship. But when I look back in my life, I got my first book for mediumship at my grandmother's funeral, which was James Van Prague's book, Talking to Heaven. I never missed John Edwards or Sylvia Brown on TV. I read all 42 of Sylvia Brown's books before I left high school. But spirituality to me back then was more about paranormal. And so I was like a ghost hunter. I was a paranormal investigator between 18 and 24. And that's how I spent my weekends. And I would be the one that followed the medium and took notes off of things that they said. Never once in my entire life leading up to 31 did I think that that was a potential possibility for me. Even though I had every reader say that to me, Spirit clearly was giving me signs.
Yeah.
And Danielle's sitting here like, "What's a sign of your sign?" Like I wasn't even looking for it. I was just trying to survive. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yep.
you're so young, you know nothing. And it was finally when I was 31, I don't know how I ended up with one ticket to a demonstration of mediumship that was happening in Squamish by this lady who I will not name. Just because she went born again Christian. She doesn't associate herself with mediumship anymore. But I was the first one to get read in the audience. And then I told my friend about the experience who was watching my baby, and she got me a one-on-one reading with her. And this one-on-one reading was like still to this day, the best reading I've ever had in my life. And this lady knew everything. And she's like, "You're a medium, right?" And I was like, "No, girl." I'm like, and I said this exact thing to her. "I am not pure enough to talk to angels." Okay. Because
Oh,
I'd had such a colorful past, shall we say,
I love that you just said that. Me too.
right?
Sarah. Me too.
Right. I mean, involves police, divorce, like there's a lot of things in my past. I keep being told, like, I married someone the first time I met them. When I was 18 years old, I'm like, "Yes, let's go get married. That's a great idea." Turned out to be a huge mistake, right? And so there was nothing that was like super transferable to me, but she just said, "Come sign up for my mediumship development course." And I was so convinced I was actually not a medium that I refused to. I signed up for her spiritual development course instead. And so the first class I went to go to, it was a 300-kilometer, which I think is about 250-mile commute each way to go to this development class, weekday. Okay. And the first class, only one other person showed up. And she just said, "You know what, let's just try something." And she said, "Okay, Danielle, just close your eyes and tell me what you see." And all of a sudden, I saw shadows in my imagination, this and this. Like I'm using my hands here. One was higher than the other. I'm like, I have a woman here who feels like a grandmother, and she's with a younger male. And I want to say Dustin. And then this woman grabbed me and she started crying. She was like, "What did you just say?" She's like, "I just lost my son, Justin." And I got covered in shivers. I'm still in shivers even today, retelling the story. And I was so shaken by her desperation clinging to me that I got really scared in that moment. And I stopped the connection because I didn't know what to do. But she immediately moved me over to her mediumship development class.
Yeah.
But synchronicity again, only me and her showed up, and she had just lost her son. And so he was my first spirit I connected with. And she did call me for quite a few years after, invited me over all the time. And kept wanting me to like connect in with her. And I did read for her a few years later, but I ended up just staying in this women's development circle for about 4 years. It wasn't the healthiest of relationships, to be honest with you, but I'm really glad I learned from her because she is somebody who was very devout to the world of spirit.
Mm.
She was someone who never let us forget who we're working for. And she was also a teacher that really taught a lot about spiritual philosophy, which is my favorite aspect of this work, is thinking about spiritual things, formulating my own belief system around certain things, like asking the world of spirit to align me with situations that validate the inspirations that come. Like that's my favorite aspect of doing this work. And then sharing, right? That's my Sag moon, sharing what I have come in to learn. And so I really developed under one person because she actually wouldn't let us develop under anyone else if we developed under her. So and then I kind of branched out to more spiritualist teachers like Tony Stockwell, Mavis Patilla, Aboriginal medium Sean Leonard. God, who else have I studied? I've studied under so many different people. Michael Mayo, Dominic Bogue. I mean, Gordon Smith has been an influence for me my whole life because I used to watch The Psychic Barber on TV. I read his books. I listened to all his lectures. So I've just been very inspired by every medium who I get to watch work has taught me something, but it's really been in the reading setting that has been the biggest tool is doing the thing, doing the readings. I learn more in session than anything else, which is
Yeah.
why in the community I create every single week opportunities to practice, because I mean, I could talk to you till the cows come home, but until you do the thing, it's all just knowledge that sits somewhere in your brain, right? You need to be embodied in it. So yeah, have mediumship's been my awareness forever, but I didn't really start developing until 9 years ago when I was 31.
I love hearing all of that. And it is, you're right, it's like a muscle memory. You have to do the work, and uh, you learn the difference between mediumship and psychic when you're in sitting in the power, when you're doing the work with clients. And that's the biggest question I get. I mean, that's a question I asked you at some point, is how do you know the difference between being psychic and being a medium? Because
Mhm.
they get intertwined so much. And it's just constantly going inward, feeling what it's like to be in your own energy first. And then you know when someone enters your energy, whether it be a spirit or someone coming in the room. And I didn't do any research on mediums. I I'm a little bit different than you because probably my Cancer sun and my Pisces moon all water, like super a sponge. And so I can be very easily influenced. And I work on that. I have to really have strong boundaries. And it has to be like a cognitive, like I'm having boundaries today. Because if not, like if I hang out with smokers long enough, I'll probably end up smoking. And I don't know why I use that as an example because I hate cigarettes. I've never taken a drag of cigarette in my life. But it's just I've learned that about myself. And so I have to really be careful of what the environment I'm in
Mhm.
because I'm influenced. And so I didn't want to watch mediums. I didn't want to work with mediums. I didn't want anything to enter my consciousness
Mhm.
until I figured out what the heck was going on with me. And then you were the first person. Well, I did go to the LA School of Spiritual Arts and I was certified to be a medium. And it was a similar story to yours,
Mhm.
where she just was like, "You've never done this before?" And I think spirit shows up with a bang for us
Yeah.
because they're like, we want them to believe. Like if
Yeah.
they're going to do this, like if they're going to be like our foot soldiers, we want them to be like, oh, this worked. And that's what happened. And then, after I got my certification and stuff, things kind of slowed down in some areas, magnified in some areas. Like you, I went through this kind of up and down with names. Right now, I'm like not doing great with names. It's really pissing me off. But it's a learning curve and it's ebb and flow. But when I got introduced to you and then you would talk about certain people, I really was so drawn to you, the way you worked. And I felt like we both have this, let's make it modern. Let's make it digestible. Let's make average normal people feel like they can lean into this work and that they don't have to be some like woo woo mystic,
Yeah.
that anybody can tap in if they'd like. And so then that you've helped pave the way because who you trust, I've kind of been like, I'll trust them now. Like, I'll
Maybe
lean
I'll
in.
trust them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in saying that, I've had 4 mentors go born again Christian. So blind leading the blind over here. I've had some incredible experiences, but I've also had like some traumatizing ones too. But those experiences, because spirit has always been setting me up to be a teacher. I can see that now from the day one. You talk about earlier how, yes, the miracle of mediumship most definitely is based off the need of the sitter, right? When there's a need for mediumship, it is easier to connect and they are more profound sessions. But my path has been one of looky-loos. My path has been one of people who are like, oh, I just want to test out because I want to learn how to do this. Right. And so then it took me a few years to realize, like, oh, spirit is actually bringing me people who I'm supposed to teach. So
Yeah.
my path hasn't been one so much of working so much with grief and, really hard cases. I do now in the past 2 years, but for the first many years has been really around teaching. And therefore, when I am aligned with teachers who go this like drastically other route, it's really helped form who I am as a teacher and how transparent I am. Because when I listened to their testimonies on how they went born again, and I realized they were feeling like this for a long time, and you took my money and you taught me these things, like that felt so out of integrity for me
Yeah.
that like I have devoted to being a teacher that is very transparent about my path. And it may be too much so where it turns some people off, but I think that people learn best through experiences. That's like adult learning. And so, I think it's important to be realistic. I think it's important to be honest. Even going back to the psychic and mediumship difference, the reason why I'm so passionate about learning the difference between psychic and mediumship is because if you think Nana is the one telling you to quit your job and move to Timbuktu, the sitter's going to do it because Nana said it. But very well, we may be picking up that information from them and their desires. And so they will then be faced with their own agency and their own self-determination. And that's the difference that I have found, is that people will listen to you when you're in this position because you are in one of power of authority. And therefore, it's very integral to be able to say, look, this is coming from you, not Nan over here, but I get the desire that you want to move and shift and blah, 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 blah. Right. And that's how come I think it's like important to get into the nuances and the details of this work, because the ripple effect is huge and life lasting in our line of work. So it's important to get it as right as you can, but don't be afraid to mess up a bit too, right?
Yeah. Well, gosh, the confidence involved with just doing it in general. I think that's where people get hung up. They'll do it and they'll practice and they'll practice for years. And
4 years for me, girl.
Yeah. It's like, when do I make it a business? When do I charge? How much do I charge? Should I refund them? I don't think they liked it. I mean, you toy around with all of these things. I just had last week, I think it was last week or the week before, I don't know. This full moon has got me like in Twilight Zone. I reached out to somebody because I was kind of hung up. Like usually when the session's done, I'm pretty good at like hanging up the coat, like it's done. But this session stayed with me. And I finally was like, if this is staying with me this long, I need to reach out. And so I reached out and I said, the energy from our session is still around me. And I just want you to know that if you aren't 100% satisfied, I would like to offer you a full refund, because I don't want a penny in my bank account that somebody isn't excited for it to be there. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, no, it was dead on, like really, really confirmed that this was something else. And then I kind of felt embarrassed, like what an amateur I am. But I also felt proud of myself because I want spirit and my people to know that foremost, I want to serve spirit and you. The money is just an energy exchange. It really, really is. But if I feel like something is off, then we're going to make it right. I hope that doesn't come up again. And I just can, clear the space more, but the integrity and like you say, the philosophy around it, I love and I hold to a very high standard as well.
Yeah. Funny enough, synchronicity strikes us for the fourth time here, because right before this, I taught a 90-minute class on pricing your services. And this was like one of the big topics. And one of the teachings I had around it was, I learned a long time ago, because I was faced with a very similar situation where I had to give a couple of refunds because XYZ, and the people were shocked. It's like, and then I had to kind of learn that my experience and their experience are two totally different experiences. And I can't assume the sitter's experience. I just have to trust that they will be empowered enough to tell me if they feel like that. But I can't make any assumptions on their experience, because I've done the same. I remember confusing clients where it's like, I'm just going to give you half back because it was just like half good. Like, and they're confused and they're like, what? Like, I loved every second of that. But because we know what our best looks like, and if it doesn't meet that like really impossible high standard, because, Gordon Smith's quote, mediumship is inconsistent.
So inconsistent.
It's not consistent. And so we just really have to like quiet that little inner saboteur, quiet that little inner mean girl, and just say, you know what? I'm going to trust I did the best I could. I showed up with the best of intentions, and I feel good with what I did today. And that's how come too, I started going to my spirit team for advice on how I did. I stopped actually asking for testimonials altogether from my reading clients. I don't even collect them anymore. If they send something, fine. But I started asking spirit for their testimonial. How did I do? What do I have to work on? And that really helped me make that shift and stop giving all my power to the client and their experience. Right.
Thank you for that. I'm going to use that. Like, I really appreciate that advice, because I talk to spirit on everything else. Like, why wouldn't I include them on that? Because they're definitely going to help me. And I know there'll be times where, even with this podcasting thing, I'm like 5 or 6 episodes in and I'm being a critic. And it's like, I have to knock it off and ask spirit, how can I do better next time? That's it. Yeah. It's the only thing I can ask for. Yeah. gosh, my mind just went like 5 different places, because I have so many things I want to talk to you about.
I know. Well, if I can just even lead into a little bit about the pricing journey, because I think your audience will get a real big kick out of this. But I was exactly what you're saying, like 4 years development, had this like Virgo goal of 150 practice readings, not realizing that would take me 3 years. because because I was only developing once a month, right? I was only doing once a month classes for 5 hours, and you can only do so many readings there. And, when it came into pricing, much like all the other areas of development in business and mediumship, it's really connected to how we feel about ourselves. And it's really connected to our worth, our access, our privilege, our community, our society, our cost of living, our ancestry, our, cultural backgrounds. Like, pricing is just such a nuanced conversation because there is no regulating governing body. There is no one way. And like, my pricing journey was really painful, one of confidence, right? It was like free for years, and then donation, which was about $20, and then 20, 40, 60, 75, 90, 100, 111, 125, 150, 189, 200, 222,
Holy crap, Danielle.
333, and now 444, right? So it's like, that storyline of my pricing is very indicative of the healing it took me to step into this work.
Yeah.
Right. And it was one around confidence.
It absolutely is. And I did it intuitively. And I asked myself, how much is it going to take me to show up with confidence? This is the conversation. And I think I went through my healing journey with pricing when I was behind the chair. So I did hair for 10 years. And guess what I did? I counted everybody's paychecks. And I was like, you know what? I know that you probably can't afford this price, because I kept getting promoted at work because I was good at what I did. Yeah. And I love to make people feel good. I love to make them beautiful. And I would give away my services. Like, I'm not kidding you. I would make them pay just like the $5 fee for their color. And I would do it because I was a giver. I wanted them to feel beautiful. And that really, I killed my body doing it. I would do 8 clients in a day. I'd work on the 30 and have an assistant. And it was like labor, physical labor, not to mention the emotional labor, and that I was a psychic and a therapist and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I should have been charging 4 times what my prices were. And so once I got to this work, after I went through an immense healing journey, I knew that there was a price that I was going to be like, I don't want to feel uncomfortable charging this, but I want to feel, how much will it take me to show up like 100% confident? And then I want to always have the intention, please bring people that I can serve. And I knew that I came out the gate kind of high because it was my first year, but I was busy. So then if I was busy, there was no argument, and I was attracting people and I was showing up, and so that there just shows like a kind of a different story of people were probably like, you're just beginning this, but I wasn't just beginning it. I've been working for spirit my whole life. I just didn't know and go around and say that I was a medium or a psychic. But believe me, I've been giving people intuitive advice since, I don't know, I was 15.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. And that is what I see mostly for my clients. They usually start at 200, 222, right? Like around that price range. And that's my desire for people. I don't want anyone to take the path I took. Like, that's why I'm a teacher, because I'm like, hey, if I can save you some lessons, then you can go off and have your own, and you don't have to repeat history here, which is how come I teach the way that I do, because I'm hoping that people will have a different path and continue to expand light working as like a space. Right. So I think that that's a beautiful way to do it and look at it.
Awareness just came to me too, is I think when the session I just shared with you that I thought didn't go quite right. I think what I love in a session is when I can feel or witness transformation or healing, like from the beginning of the session to the end. And it just made me realize I'm not in control of their timeline. Somebody may come to me for just an introduction, and they're going to do the transformation and the healing in the background for the next 6 months or a year. And then it's going to settle in. And so when you're the conduit, you can't control the transformation or the healing. You just have to be the conduit.
Yeah. Well, and I love the Maya Angelou quote around this, where she says, you have no right to know what your legacy is because you don't understand the impact and ripple effect that you create. We're not privy until we get home. And it's not until I have a client who I read for 4 years ago join my development circle do I find out that one session over the course of 4 years led them back to me, and they're in a completely different place. And for the most part, mediumship as a work, if we're just doing readings, is like a series of first impressions,
Yeah.
right? Like very rarely do we see somebody again and again, especially if we're busy. And I have policies in my company that you can't get more than one reading from me a year, because I don't want to create some sort of codependency issue, or I don't want you to give me your power. So I've always had that rule in it. So very rarely will I see people again, but it's just trusting that the little time that we had together has a shift. So I personally am very much in the dark for the most on the impact that my work has had, but based off the energetics of my career, I trust I'm doing good work because spirit keeps bringing me masses amount of people.
That gave me goosebumps all over. I have not heard that quote before. Can you just repeat whatever you said that is her quote just one more time? I want
So
that
I'm
to
going to
sink in.
paraphrase it here, right? So,
Yeah.
but Maya Angelou is like, you have no right to know your legacy because you will never understand the ripple effect that you create.
Ugh. It's just, yes, 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 yes. And it's so true. There's people in my life that have created immense ripples that were in my life for a second in passing. And so that's the work, is just to show up in your heart's expression.
Yeah.
If you're called to be of service, wonderful. If not, that's okay too. We all have our space. We all have our, reflection in this multi-dimensional space we're sharing called Earth. But I love that. Oh my gosh, that just like moved me.
Yeah, well, and I'm a Scorpio rising, so I am here to create transformation,
Mhm.
right? So just by way of, the way the stars were aligned when I chose to kind of come in, it's like, of course I'm here to help people transform, but I have to transform first, right? And I'm continually transforming. Like there are things that continue to come up where it's like, whoa, I didn't even know I was wounded there. Like, whoa, I didn't even realize that this was like a thing. Like I never realized how deep of a wound around rejection I had until I had my membership. And then people started canceling. And I was surprised that even though people were canceling for very good reason, right? They don't have time to consume the content, or they've run their course or whatever. For some reason, it always felt like rejection for me. And then I had a huge year and a half of feeling rejection at every corner of my business and practice. But I think when we commit to these paths, we're here for the good, the bad, the ugly, the expansive, the contraction, right? Like we have to be here for it all. And so I don't think that we're ever really done. It's like every time you master like one thing, it's like the next thing comes in right away, right? It's like,
Yeah.
great. Once
And
I
I
quit
know
my
that
job after years, all of a sudden I started comparing myself. I'm like, whoa, I have never compared myself. Like, what the hell?
it's inevitable. It is inevitable. And I know that you've done some training. I've done a little bit. I haven't done the whole program, but with Melanie Ann Layer, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing that she talks about that that really resonates is it's like whatever your goals are, know that you're going to get the duality of both. So it's like you want more customers, if you want more clients, then you're going to get more ridicule, you're going to get more criticism. So you're going to have to like hold both. And that's what, because I've watched you evolve and grow. Even, I mean, I know you already were on like a bigger scale, but then even with like the development that's been changing and stuff, things are shifting, but I see them shifting for like you are ready for more, and I'm watching it happen. And then with that, some people are going to be turned away, and it's just holding space for both and knowing it isn't personal, which is always going to be very hard because we want, well, I don't want to speak for you, but in an ideal world, me and my best heart's expression really wants to make everybody happy.
Yeah. My coach said something to me when I said, what's your goal for this year? I'm like, I want to double my membership because I put everything into it. Like it's actually what makes me the least money. And it's where I spend the most of my time and energy because I'm so passionate about that space. And it really is an entry level space for people to get to know me and my body of work. And I'm all in with it as much as possible. And when I said that to my coach, Emily, who said, you want 200 happy clients.
Yes.
You're not prepared for the energetic flip side of unhappy clients. And I had to do a lot of really deep work around it. And I went into this beautiful visualization a few weeks ago where Callie showed up, right? The goddess of death.
Yep.
And she made me look in front of my audience and say, all disheveled and messed and like crying. And she's like, ask them if they love you like this. And I asked the audience, do you love me like this? And half of them were like, yes. And half of them were like, no. And she's like, are you okay with that? Can you accept that? And she took me through a series of things that I have been resisting discomfort around and make me come into acceptance of it. And it's not about like you know, as a people pleaser, a lot of us are people pleasers on this path. It's like trying to be everything to everybody. You can do everything right and still have people like not like it. And you just have to be okay with that. You have to accept that that is the reality of this work. And if you can sit in that discomfort of not being liked, of not being appreciated, of not being seen how other people see you, then what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you'll be okay. You'll keep going. You've survived so much more. So I actually feel like I have healed from that piece of it by going through this exercise with Callie of like just incredible acceptance around the fact that people are going to leave and people won't get it. And there are
Mhm.
people in my little town. I live in a very little town, and there's people walking around like, I don't get the big deal is. And there's other people walking around like, oh my God, she changed my life. And
Yeah.
that's just the way life is everywhere, in your career, in your 9 to 5s, in your household, in your family dynamics. Why would it be any different here?
And
Just hurts more because we care more.
it totally hurts because it is, I've had to have a separation from me and the medium experience. And I don't know if that's healthy or for everyone or whatever. But you know, when there's certain people out there that think that you should have like one account, and I have a personal account and I have the mediumship experience. And I only follow people on the mediumship experience that will provide my heart or mind with content that will help me serve my audience better. Therefore, I'm not going to follow clients. I'm not going to follow anybody that I feel an obligation to be present in their life from that platform, because it doesn't serve who I'm being in that space. And so if people don't like the medium experience, it's like I can weather it a little bit more because I know it's not all of me. Like I am not the one that's going to show up and show all of my messiness, because when you're Pisces moon, there's a lot of effing messiness, like depression and darkness. I will talk about it, but I'm a Leo rising and I will show up looking fucking good when I talk about it. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's a good placement to have. My daughter's a Leo rising. I'm like, you girl, I'm like, you're so lucky.
oh, and I had to work to get that, because the duality of that is me thinking I don't know who I am, because I have one side that wants to be in pajamas with my stuffed animal at 38 years old and have tea and cry and watch The Notebook 3 times in a row. And then I have this other side that wants to put on a designer dress and go out and like be seen. And so it's like, who am I then? And I had to do a lot of work on accepting I'm both. I'm both.
Yeah.
And then who is going to be in my business? It's like, well, who is going to be in my business? And that's work I had to do, because I don't want to abandon the compassionate side of me, but I also don't want to bring in all my trauma and all my water and all my stuff to hope people will relate to me. I just have to trust spirit will bring me the people that I can help, because it's like, I've been there. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And
And I
so,
think too, our patriarchal kind of structure that society in North America is set up in demands for us to be consistent, demands for us to show up you know, in a way that we're expected. Like if you're like this in the interview, you better show like this in the workplace. But we are women who are ruled by the moon, who changes phases every 72 hours. The last thing we are is consistent in anything. And so it's like we are allowed to be literally 28 different versions of ourselves and show up unapologetically for every one of those versions, because we are cyclic beings.
yep.
And as entrepreneurs, we get to create the reality in which we want to see in our world. And so that's kind of when I teach business. I'm like, I don't give content calendars, because guess what? There's a week a month I don't want to post anything, and I don't post anything.
Yeah.
And I don't care. You know, like
I don't either.
permission slip granted. You don't need all these masculine structures that keep you consistent. Consistency is not key.
No,
Right.
no,
So
really not. And I'm a mess on my social media, and I don't want to say it's a bad thing, because I don't think it's a bad thing, because when I'm feeling something and I write from a place of deep feeling, that's when I get the most interaction. And like you, my goal is enrichment in my connections, not numbers. I
yes.
don't really care how many followers I have at all. I care how much engagement I have. And I probably eventually will be like you, because I have a lot of engagement in my inbox, because I show up for people. I care about them. I want to help them. And then when that gets overwhelming, I'll have a boundary and say it's too much. Or sometimes I just can't answer. And I had to really work on that, because I would beat myself up because I didn't ever want them to feel abandoned. But then you realize it's like, this is a business platform, and me showing up is a bonus. It's not mandatory.
Yeah. Well, and I'm really obsessed with lately. I talk about it a bit on the podcast, being in my community. I'm really tired of social media games. I'm tired of these big mega platforms telling us, like, oh, you want to promote something, you have to pay us for your audience to see that. Or, I'm going to show you things that make you angry to keep you on the app. Because the longer you're on the app, the more we can sell to you, the more ads we can da 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 da. I can see right through social media and where they want us to play. And I've never played it. I delete followers every Monday that I know are
I
fake
do too.
followers.
I
On my
do.
meme Mondays, I go through my most recent followers. I'm like, I can tell when they're coaches. They're going to be in my inbox saying, like, have you hit for your first 10K yet? And I delete all these people because I too, I want quality engagement. But I've been recently very, very obsessed with building my brand and building my business off social media. Right? Podcasting, perfect example. We're
Yeah.
off social media. We're not playing in the games of algorithms. We don't have some big social giant telling us how to play within their sandbox. And that's the only way that will grow. Because I think people are tired of it. And I think people want authenticity. I think that we have such sharp BS radars now that we can tell when people are trying to sell authenticity or sell their wounds as a way to be relatable,
Yes.
wipe away the tears at the end of the
Ugh.
post and say, anyways, it's 16,000 to work with me this month. So I'm like, come
I'm
on.
so over it. I'm so happy you said that. I really am. And I feel so sad because the people buying it, like I said, are, well, I was saying conviction is contagious. And so they've become addicts of gathering information outside of themselves. And they think they need it to be successful, survive, whatever, if you're trying to better your relationship. And that's the difference between a coach and a therapist. Is a therapist makes you reflect and go inward, and a coach is like, let me tell you how. But as women, we're being called, we know how. We just need to think about where we want to go. What do you want? Not the how.
Yeah.
Spirit will show you the how, and my how is very different than your how. So let's take the attention away from the how and just the freaking what, and say to Spirit every single day, I'm ready to receive. I'm ready to receive. How may I be of service? And I'm ready to receive. Those are my two mottos.
Yeah. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, when we get to where we're going, I think we're going to realize that all we really wanted to be was seen and heard,
Inner
like
child.
the simplicity of it. And it's like, you can hire all the coaches who have made all the hundreds of thousands of every single month and try to replicate their model like it's an MLM, but it's like, it doesn't work like that. It's like, we're all going to work things differently. We're going to attract people where we can meet them, right? I don't know if you've heard Melanie's teachings behind the difference between like a coach and a mentor as well.
Yes, that's the program I did sign up for.
Coach, yeah. So I did a whole year with her, and just because I like being in her energy, she's just someone, whenever I'm in her energy, I just get inspired.
Me too.
And so I actually don't resonate so much with the coaching space and coaching world. I consider myself to be a mentor. I'm a mentor because the only thing I teach is how I live my life every day. I am in mediumship. I'm at a point in my career, I don't have to do readings anymore. I have evidence. I have stats behind me. I have social equity that shows like I know what I'm talking about, and I'm, an authority within the space. But I don't want to teach something that I'm not immersed in.
Yes.
It feels inauthentic to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I insist on continuing to do readings and sessions and walk through the fire so that I can be a mentor to somebody who wants to walk through the same path.
I agree 100%. I think the way that she put it, and I love that she always really credits people for what they say, because I want to do that as well. Like, I never want to take people's words and act like they're my own.
Yes,
And she said that the coach is more about teaching like a niche, like this is the how, and a mentor is like, this is who I am. And if you're in alignment with my energy and you want me to walk shoulder to shoulder with you, then I will show you the way. And that you are 100% a mentor. And that's why I resonate with you so much, is because there's so much work that you're doing that I'm not there yet. But when I'm in your presence, just like Melanie's, I absorb it. And sometimes it's not even about the words, it is the energy. I'm at that point where it's the energy exchange.
Yeah.
And that's why I think like your membership is worth every penny, because I can show up to the lives or the classes that have been done in the past, and I can get that fill. And I need it because, like I said, I'm impressionable and I can get real dark. And so I need the inspiration in my life. And when I'm inspired, man, do I impact people.
Yeah. And so it's good to surround yourself with people who expand you, right? And inspire you. And that's really why we hire mentors. And my first mentor said this to me and I was so offended.
Definitely.
She looked at me near the end of our container and she said, she was going around the room and saying like, oh, you're a medium, you're a healer, you're a psychic, like identifying us, putting identities to us. And she looked at me, and back then I was into angel healing a lot, and doing a lot of different angel work. And she looked at me, she's like, you're a medium. She's like, but people will just want to sit with you. So like just dismissing me, you know what I mean? Like people will just want to sit with you. And I took that at the time as being, so what, I don't have skill, I don't have quality, like all the things I don't get, very apparent about him. But then as I went along my career, I mean, I've had judges hire me, I've had law enforcement hire me, lots of doctors, and all of them say the same thing. I just want to sit in your energy. I just want to be in your presence. And I get it now, because I also, like with Melanie, she doesn't teach structures, she
Yeah.
doesn't teach you like how to do things. Something about being in her presence inspires me and expands me. And she's actually the only person who I've really had that kind of connection with. And she's been able to do that for me. And I didn't realize that that's what my teacher was saying back then. Right. She was
Yeah.
saying like, oh, people would just want to sit in your energy.
Yeah.
And I actually had, in my corporate career, I was like being fast tracked to C-level and I had no qualifications. I barely got through high school, and I had people with PhDs working under me, but they were all fighting for me. They were all like, we want Danielle, we want Danielle, we want Danielle, like willing to offer me all the things. And they all said the same thing. You're good energy for the team. We just want you because you just make the space fun. You make the space happy, joyful. And so I guess if I could be called anything, that's not the worst thing to be called, but it's hard to accept the fact that you are enough.
Yeah, it
Like
is.
that's what this is. It's like, I am enough just being me. And that's been like a huge thing to kind of come to terms with. And it's taken me almost 10 years to get there.
Well, we've been in our own energy our whole life. So people saying, I like being in your energy, you're like, what part? Do tell. I'd love to know your take. How am I showing up today? Is it going to be the same in 2 days? Maybe not.
No.
And Melanie, I agree with you, but I watch her work and I know she's channeling. Would you
Oh
agree?
yeah. She's a
Okay.
huge channeler.
And so she has crafted this empire. She just announced that within the last 5 years, she made $50 million.
She was
And
homeless and Canadian, by the way,
yeah,
Canadian and homeless.
it's profound. But then watching her work, I'm like, this girl is channeling and she's stripped all of the spiritual words away from it. And it's made her audience bigger
Mhm.
because she doesn't say, I'm channeling. She
Yeah.
just has downloads. Or she was, live coaching somebody and she was using an example and she's like, do you sing? And she was like, yeah, how do you know that? And she's like, I have no idea. And then does this analogy about her singing and how it's comparable to the question she had. And so
Mhm.
I'm watching it being like, this girl has mastered this like open portal and this really intense, like bright third eye, but she
Mhm.
doesn't talk about it in that way. And that's what's made her audience so large. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who spirituality can be a turnoff. I attract a lot of people with religious trauma. So the fact that I'm able to come to spirituality from a non-denominational place, I'm First Nations, you know what I mean? Like I have a belief in a creator, but I don't have any kind of organized religion. I think talking about spirituality can limit your audience size because everyone thinks about spirituality very differently and we all have very different definitions and lived experiences with them. So I think she's very smart in doing that. But I know too, I've been, in her world since 2018. I've been part of her classes and following her back before she even made her first million. And people have been asking her this whole time for channeling classes, but you and I know, like literally we're all walking around being inspired all the time. We have a body of helpers, spirit helpers surrounding us, and those aren't just guides and angels and ancestors, they're also inspirers. And
Yeah.
so when you stand up and teach in front of a classroom or you do a presentation instead of a boardroom, don't think for a second you're alone. Like
Yep.
there are people invested in where you are going and they are helping inspire you. And I use the analogy of a flywheel. I can tell when I'm channeling because I'll be talking and I feel like it's me, but there comes a point like in a spin class where you're building up that energy, but then the flywheel takes over
Yep.
and then you're like trying to keep up with the flywheel. Like that's what I experience when I'm teaching and channeling. That's how come I don't worry about a curriculum or content. I used to be paranoid about my Q&As. Give me your questions first so I can think about them. But then I'm like, well, spirit always tells you where to go.
Yeah.
So I think all of us are out here channeling a bit and just not knowing how to name it or identify it.
Yeah. And for those listening, like if you want to truly channel, just open your mouth and learn how to filter out the bullshit. And the bullshit is, anything, false beliefs, criticism, anything that's making you apologize, anything that's making you justify, like that's when channeling happens, is when you just allow yourself to begin to speak, and it becomes really fast sometimes, like Danielle was saying. And I will channel a lot when I am on the treadmill. It just
Yeah.
downloads. And I'm like, if I get a pen or try to write any of this down, I'll lose it. And so I just have to hope that it lands where it needs and I absorb what I need and then share what I can when I'm in a space to share.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's like, it's not that important. It is in that moment, but it's like, I don't need to like be like, oh my gosh, hold on, that's so brilliant, because it's usually for me. I'm channeling for me.
Yeah.
And so just receive. um oh gosh, I swear, as you talk, I'm like ping ponging around, and I know that we probably need to bring it to a close, but I love talking to you, and I hope that the listeners understand why I am in your group and why I look up to you for so many things, because you can tell that you've surrendered in this path so much, and that you are 100% willing to serve and be in like wear the teacher hat, and you do it so well. You do it so well.
Thank you. That makes my heart. And I will say, I've had over 60 people launch podcasts from the Empowered Podcaster, and you're the first one to ask me on your podcast.
Stop
So
it.
not even a word of lie. So it was such an easy yes. And it was funny that the only thing that worked for me was the most recent one that you had. So I think this only took like a week to set up. I was like, oh, look at that. None of the other appointment spots work other than next week. So thank you for asking me, because I think a lot of people think either you're too busy or you'll say no because you're too small. I'm like, I am sorry, but it all starts with one client, one download, like just one thing. And it's like, and then the abundance just comes. So I appreciate you even asking me and being courageous enough to ask for me. It was such an easy yes. I adore your energy. I mean, we look kind of similar too, which is kind
We
of
totally are like, so I have Cherokee on my dad's side.
yeah.
So like Cherokee Indian, like I definitely have like, I just don't know the history of it. I wish I did, but like, even when I was younger, like with the high cheekbones, like people always knew that I was Native American.
Yeah.
Well, actually where I grew up, everyone thought I was Mexican, would talk to me in Spanish and talk about a colorful back.
A lot of people thought I was Asian growing up as a high school. Actually, I had a really terrible nickname in my baseball team. They called me the little Chinese boy Diane because they all thought I was Asian and they all thought my name was Diane. Lasted one season on that team.
Oh, I had a terrible nickname too that I don't even want to tell you guys. I'm not ready to tell you guys, but I was not like, people weren't very nice to me. I remember giving a little boy in second grade a football that I had a big crush on, and his friend brought it back and said, he doesn't want a football from a dog. And I remember that so much because I'm like, oh, I'm a dog. Okay, that's great. And I'll just be one of the boys. And I grew up with brothers. I ended up on the wrestling team. I was actually kind of scrappy. I was more of, it took me work to get into my feminine. And I had a counseling session, and like, I was 23 or something. And I was like, I like the color pink. The whole session was about admitting how girly I am. And I could have known that because I always wanted to go to prom. So I went to 6 proms. So I was a tomboy, but I really like, I wanted to have a ball, like, and so I went with friends, I went with other schools, and I loved that. And so it's always been fighting to come out. Like it's that Leo rising.
Yeah.
There's a quick story I have to share. So I guess I was born in Missouri, and I came from very humble beginnings, like a trailer, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps a scenery.
Yeah. And my grandparents moved to Phoenix. And so my mom put me on a plane, and I don't know, I was 3, 4. I don't really know how old I was. And this was back when like there were little planes that just landed and you walk down the stairs. And so I flew to Phoenix, and the story kind of doesn't make sense as I'm about to tell it, but this is how it's been told to me from my grandmother. And I definitely was not flying first class. And my grandmother says the plane opened and this woman with this long mink coat and huge sunglasses came out, and she was holding my hand. And I walked down the stairs with her and she was just like, Jennifer, like, who is this woman? And she was like, oh, she's the most lovely girl. She sat in first class with me and we shared a soda. And she just tells the story as in, like, when I was younger, I had this love for luxury. I mean, I probably asked if I could sit next to her. I have no idea. I don't
Yeah.
remember. It just kind of begins to make me understand
Yeah.
how I'm supposed to be in this life. And it's to bring people to a place of luxury and that they deserve it. And if you open up to that, if you open up to the beauty in the world and say, I'm ready to receive, I have 100 stories I won't share today about how it just shows up. It doesn't all have to be in the masculine of like, I need to make this much money so I can buy this. Like, da, da, da. It just, you just have to be willing to receive a beautiful life. And then there it is.
I love that. See, my astrology is set up 50-50. I'm literally 5 planets masculine, 5 feminine, which is why I think I have that really healthy balance. But I will say, I feel most alive in my masculine when I'm doing my masculine things. It's like when I need to decompress from like mothering, right? Like being that mom, I lean into work. I'm like, can I create a flow chart here? Can I like create a presentation, which is kind of feminine too in that creation process. But I am someone who can really easily, though it does take more effort to get into my feminine. I think that's because of my upbringing too. You know, as a competitive runner, competitive boxer, I worked with race cars up until I was 28, like from 17. So I was always the only female on the team. My first experience working with women was not a good one, you know, and so I had to do a lot of sister wound healing around this too. But man, the feminine, when I tap into my true feminine, that power frightens me. I'm scared of her. I'm like, wow, you hold a lot of power.
I feel that.
So that's how come I think like, I feel like I'm still going to be on this journey of fully stepping in to my true divine feminine. But when I see her glimpses of her, I'm like, I like you. Queen. But I'm like in my masculine, I'm pretty safe over here. It's predictable. It's energizing. So I love them both. And I can balance them both pretty well.
The photo shoot you just did, like
that,
she was
I sent you that picture, right?
She showed you up, like she showed up that day. And I was like, oh damn. Like,
wait till you see the picture of me screaming. Because that was my feminine. That was like, I need to scream. I need to get out all this energy. Like the feminine is just so alive, but it takes a while to access her, I think, too, because of our societal structure and stuff like that as well.
And we have to move through the archetypes. Like with Alex Street, I was just talking to you about him before we started this. He's hired, or I hired him to help me with my story and my communication, because I'm like, I do not want people to connect with me because of my trauma, because of all the adversities I've overcome. It's just not who I am. And if I need to tell it in an intimate setting, I will, but I'm not going to blast it from the rooftops. And I want to heal the people that did hurt me. I don't want to drag them down. Anyway. So where was I just going with this?
Feminine, masculine with your voice coach mentor.
Yeah, I know. And I lost my thought. This is so
we're coming off that full moon energy, girl. We've had some wine. We are good.
Oh, the archetypes. Okay. What I realized is I put my inner feminine child on a pedestal, and I've embodied her through and through. And so she has a lot of room in my space right now, and I need to move on. So there's the maiden, and there's the mother, and there's the muse, and there's all of these, the Madonna. There's all these facets of the feminine. And I think that a lot of people think of like the divine feminine, and it's just like one aspect, like this, like sexuality. I think a lot of people think of sexuality. It's like, no, there's so much more, and we have to heal all of it.
Yes.
All of it. And then the queen, the diva, the inner diva. Oh, okay. I think that me forgetting what I was saying is a good time to end the podcast.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes. Oh, Danielle, I think you know and can feel it, but I just find you so amazing. I'm so excited for your journey and moving into your own platform. I am a big fan. I'm going to be participating as much as I can. And if anyone is listening and wants to start a podcast, go and get her Pro Podcaster. Is that what it's called?
So the Empowered Podcaster. So you can go to squamishmedium.com or myspiritschool.com.
Yeah. And it's $144. Like,
I know.
Raise your price.
Look, did you not hear earlier that pricing is a struggle for me?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that when I had to do the review, so I took the initiation, and that is an 8-week program, I believe, 8 weeks.
12 weeks now.
12
Yeah.
weeks. And the one thing I gave you feedback, I was like, raise your prices.
I know. It's just for me, and this is the last thing I'll say, I promise. It's like, I make a lot of money. Like I make very, very, very good money doing this. And I feel very grateful for that. I'm also grateful I have a school. So I have a little ecosystem. I have 3 staff now I get to support and share the abundance around. But I want to speak to many people, right? Not the highest paying people. I want to speak to many. So my pricing is always at a place where it can be accessible to many people. That's what I try anyways.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I love that you have that point of view. And I think Melanie Anlayer speaks to many and just made 50 million in 5 years. So I just want to let you end with that.
we'll see where the world takes me. I'm a young woman.
Oh, I'm just kidding. I think that we all have different versions of, wealth, and money is just energy. It's just energy.
Yeah.
So thank you, Danielle. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else that you are launching or you want the listeners to know, or you'd like them to know about you that we didn't cover?
Well, I just think if you want to check out my podcast, Spirit School, it's been running for
Yes.
3 years. I share everything that I've learned on the mediumship and spiritual entrepreneurship journey. With July 1st, I'm opening up a free community. It's going to be the first time I run a free one, which will be mostly run by my team, but on the same platform as the membership. So just check me out on Instagram, Squamish Medium, if you want to keep to date with this. I only send out a newsletter once a month. So Instagram is really the best place to get in the know on all the ways you can connect with me off social media.
Off social media. All right, Danielle, thank you. Enjoy your weekend. And again, thank you for your time. I adore you. And I will see you in Spirit Circle.